How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be a complete guide to Gem Knight. This has been one of the most highly requested in the last few days, and I want to make sure that I get this out for you, especially since the deck just went 8-0 at the remote regional, which is pretty cool. The deck has some new cards, which are pretty good, and I want to make sure that no one gets caught off guard by that. Today, I am joined by my friend and teammate, Craig Smith. Introduce yourself.
How's it going, guys?
Definitely topped a YCS with Kashtira. And we know him as Kashtira Craig as well. So, how do we feel about Kashtira right now?
I'm not playing Kashtira right now. I think it's not the format for pure cash anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always going to be a couple decks that we see with Kashtira cards in it until Unicorn inevitably gets banned at some point. Hopefully, I hate that card so much. But if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over in RW, Cloud, Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, and Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so down below in the description. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more knowledgeable content. I appreciate each and every one of you for supporting the channel. Card Drive is going crazy right now. We have like 30-ish decks currently ready to go for different places that need cards for different players. So if you do know someone in need, let me know down below in the comment section and we will get them cards. But without further ado, let's hop right on into the Gem Knight guide. So the first thing I have for you is going to be discussing Nephim. Now, what did Nephim do for the deck?
So Nephrim as a card is a new starter and extender that Gem Knight didn't previously have. The deck as an FTK list was using Seraphonite to get an additional normal and kind of push this really big, heavy FTK strategy. Now with Nephrim, we have a starter that searches for Gem Knight cards all throughout the deck, can pivot in different directions, and most importantly, halves any effect damage taken during the main phase. So the deck is no longer going to be used as just this kind of going first wombo combo strategy. It's much more of a mid-range / combo deck looking to set up a board.
That is really funny that Konami just kind of acknowledged that, and they're like, all right, half damage. Listen, you can do a little bit, but nothing like super crazy. I do like this card as something that can just get sent to the graveyard for free, which you'll see later why that's so important, and then just kind of reborn itself, extend. It's really cool. I think this is a really good addition for the deck.
No, absolutely.
The next one here we have is HoloCore. Now, what did this do for the deck?
HoloCore is a Gem Knight circular for the deck, essentially. It's twofold. One, it provides a good search target off of like Gem Armadillo, Nephirim, the new spell card Dispersion. As an extender, it dumps Gem Knight Fusion, which we'll see later on in the combo is really important because it's constantly adding itself from the graveyard to the hand over and over again to be a discard outlet or just a free resource. And then arguably most importantly, there's a new effect that while it's in the graveyard and you control a Gem Knight Fusion monster, if your opponent activates a card or effect that's any card or effect, you can banish 3 Gem Knight cards from the graveyard, including itself, to negate the effect that your opponent activates. Then all of your Gem Knights currently gain 1,000 attack. So it gives you ways to set up combo lines into things like Nibiru and Imperm, where you can play around certain hand traps. You can kind of insulate some of your combo pivots. It's a really cool, versatile extender that adds a new layer to both the decks and board and ways to play into combos.
Kind of ridiculous that it's just this random Omni that also just boosts everything by a lot. So definitely a very cool addition to the deck. And as you said, it is kind of just like a circular, which, apparently that's what any deck needs to be relevant right now, which is pretty cool. But I don't even think this is like the best new support card. It's still pretty good.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. In my testing, HoloCore has been unbelievable.
So we have 2 different dispersions. Let's start with the spell card. I know this is worded pretty crazy that you can only use each effect once per turn. So tell us about it.
So Dispersion is, in my opinion, the best of the 4 new cards that Gem Knight got. So you activate one of the effects, and you have to declare which one when you activate the spell card. There's 2 effects. The first is you can fusion summon a Gem Knight using monsters from your hand or field. Up to 2 monsters from your main deck or your extra deck can be used if they are specifically non-rock Gem Knight monsters and you have Gem Knight Fusion in your graveyard. So if you go HoloCore affected dump, special summon itself, now all of a sudden your Gem Knight Dispersion is a branded fusion. So you can dump the Nephirim, you can dump a card like Quartz, for example, to add a card back. It gives you kind of versatility in what you're using as your fusion materials.
Pretty
And then the
good.
second effect is just a Rhoda for any gem monster from deck or banish. And again, has the anti FTK effect where any effect damage your opponent takes during the main phase is halved. The way it's worded is that when you activate the spell, you choose which effect to activate, and both effects are once per turn, but you can use both effects in the same turn. So you can activate a copy of Dispersion that you add off of Nephim, add, let's say, a gem armadillo, then use the Nephrim to normal the new armadillo that you searched. And then later on in the turn, if you add another copy of Dispersion to your hand and you have a Gem Knight fusion in your graveyard, you can use the second copy of Dispersion to fusion summon.
Yeah, so this is just like Mitsurugi Ritual, which is pretty crazy that we're getting another card worded like that, which is just so egregious. But, a lot of the cards to really push a deck need to be pretty good nowadays, especially if the deck isn't, like, supreme. And it's not like this deck has been, like, super bad in the past. It's been pretty okay. But even the OCG, they have Block Dragon legal, and some lists that are doing really well aren't even playing that, which is super crazy. And that just kind of shows you what the support can really do for a deck.
Yeah, it makes for an interesting conversation regarding the next ban list if we're going to see Block Dragon come over to the TCG or not.
So we do have this last one here being Diamond Dispersion, and we already know the whole deck's gimmick is fusion monsters. So what did this do for the deck?
Gem Knight Master Diamond Dispersion is a really interesting card for the deck. So it's 3 gem monsters. So importantly, you can fusion summon it using Gem Armadillo, which is the non once per turn OG Rhoda monster for the deck. During the main phase, you can send it from the field to the grave to special summon up to 3 specifically non-rock gem monsters with different names from extra and grave ignoring summoning conditions. That does for the rest of the turn lock you into fusions. And then if it's in the graveyard and a Gem Knight fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle, you can summon it. The biggest thing that this card does is later on in your combo, it gives you a really interesting large boss monster to make using the fusion effects of things like Phantom Quartz or even Gem Knight fusion, depending on your combo. And it can quick tag into a couple of the Gem Knight options that we have in the extra deck, like Seraphonite or Prismora, for example, if you have to pitch a Gem Knight card to pop a card.
So from all of the happenings of the deck so far in the TCG, I've been hearing about a lot of people playing Protos. How do you feel about that card in the deck?
Protos is an interesting card in this deck because you have quite a number of attributes available. You have lights, you have darks, you have earths, you've got other hand traps like fires, winds, and you get the Fiendsmith cards in the list as well. So you've got a number of different attributes and rank 4 access. So if you wanted to go for like Infernal Flame Banshee and play a Nemesis package to find your way to Protos, you could. Personally, the extra deck is really, really tight, especially if you're playing the Fiendsmith variant. You don't have a lot of flex space, and those spaces are going towards some of your fusion monsters to help bridge some of the combos. So while it could raise the ceiling of the deck, I'm not sure it's necessarily optimal in deck building.
Heard, and I definitely understand that when it comes to different decks. Sometimes you need every single space. So I do want to talk a little bit about the Kryptonite for Gem Knight. So we have Droll and Fulos. I know that we talked about these both being very impactful, including Droll being like the worst one for the deck.
Oh
Just
yeah, big
how
time.
impactful is it?
Droll is tough. Almost all of your 1 card combos that end on the widest board possible, which are things like Nephrim plus a discard, or Engraver plus a discard, or Armadillo or Dispersion plus a discard, they're all an immediate search. And so if they Droll on your at the resolution of your first search, oftentimes you're kind of just pivoting to Fiendsmith combo and hoping that goes through. Or depending on what you have to start with, you may not even be able to bridge. There's a lot of searching in this deck, and so Droll can be really killer.
That's really unfortunate. We already see so many decks being shut down by Droll, but I know how many people hate Droll, but, when we see decks like Mitsurugi Raizio, I'm like, thank God that we have something for this, right? And, it sucks because it does just kind of keep the decks that want to be good decks, like, at an arm's length, because even Mitsurugi Raizio under Droll can do some things, right? So it is really unfortunate to see, but this is going to continue to be an issue of the TCG.
Now, with that being said, there are some interesting things this deck is capable of doing if you do get Drolled and your hand is good. For example, if we go back to HoloCore, if you open, let's say, Nephrim and you have another Gem Knight that you search, or you have an extra body in your hand, you can find a way to link into Phantom Quartz, use Phantom Quartz in your 2 materials to make to make a Seraphonite and find a way to put a HoloCore engrave to have a negate in the graveyard. You could, if you're playing this list, pivot into the Fiendsmith combo, as I said, and just try to end on maybe Caesar and follow-up. It's depending on the hand, there are potential ways that your combo can pivot. It is just a really heavy hand trap into the deck.
Yeah, no, Fiendsmith definitely helps to mitigate that for sure, which I definitely love. And that's really what the engine to me looks like. It's always just like a pivot when you get drolled. And there are going to be some other spots you can hand trap. There's two in particular crow spots that I think are really good. Either crowing onto the Gem Knight Fusion Engrave, which is also okay. Like, if you have nothing else to just Lancia the deck so they can't just keep getting things back, it's okay. It's not going to be, like, show-stopping, but it's pretty okay. But DD Crow onto the Gem Knight Fusion or onto the Nephim when it's trying to summon back, this is going to be a really ideal spot.
We'll show it in the combo later, but if you get rid of the crow and or if you crow the Nephrim and the Fiendsmith combo, it can be really devastating if they're trying to bridge into Gem Knight cards. And the Gem Knight Fusion's effect to add back is not a once per turn. So using that over the course of the combo to fuse into like Prismora or discard off of A-Bow to summon the monster back, there's a lot of places where you want the Gem Knight Fusion in hand. It really is a nasty choke point to get rid of it, especially because the deck can't find a way to recycle it.
So not only is there this, but we were talking about Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler, and you can always go ahead and try to hit like the normal summon Gem Armadillo or like the summon of Nephrim, which is fine. I really like hitting Phantom Quartz. I think this card is really crucial to the combo, and it's really crucial to if you get stopped like a pivot point, and this is a really good card to stop here.
I agree.
So Craig is here to show off the Engraver plus a discard combo that you can bridge the Fiendsmith engine into the Gem Knight engine, and I think this is going to be a really good watch and really good information for you to know a little bit more about what the deck does and see what the deck can do.
Yeah, so if you were looking at the list before, one thing you may have noticed is Crystal Rose in the deck. And one thing that we found is that Crystal Rose is a level 2, and its effect Engrave requires you to banish a fusion monster to summon itself back. And there's this really, really cool engine that's very popular in the TCG right now that can use a bunch of bodies to bridge to a card like Sprite Sprint to dump the Crystal Rose. So this uninterrupted is kind of the biggest wombo combo you can do in the deck. So you start off with just a standard Fiendsmith line. So you'll go Engraver into Tract. You'll go Tract into Lurie, discard the Lurie, summon the Lurie. This is pretty straightforward, not a whole lot else to say. You go Lacrima here, and kind of importantly, you want the Lacrima to dump another copy of Engraver. Area Leader is going to be a very important bridge card, and it's going to help get another body on board later on in the combo to kind of make it deeper. So we'll summon the Necroquip. I accidentally added back the Engraver, so we'll shuffle back the Lurie, summon up the Engraver, and make sequence. We'll sequence here, shuffling back the Requiem and the Lacrima to make the Area Leader dump the last copy of Engraver. So that way we have all three engrave. One will be used to summon off of an A-Bow, and the second will be the fodder for Area Leader to summon back. And then here, we're going to bridge the two engines together by making Sprint, dumping Crystal Rose, using Crystal Rose's effect to banish the Necroquip in the graveyard, and then summon the Crystal Rose back. Then Crystal Rose has an effect where if it's on the board, you can send a Gem Knight or a Melodious monster from your hand or deck to the grave, and its name copies the name of the monster sent until the end phase. So here we'll copy Nephrim and then trigger the extending effect of Nephrim, sending a card from deck to hand and then summoning it. Nephrim on summon is going to add us a copy of Dispersion. We're going to use this Dispersion to add a copy of Armadillo, and then use Nephrim's effect to additional normal summon the Armadillo. Add a copy of HoloCore, use HoloCore to send the Gem Knight Fusion, summon the HoloCore, then link off the Nephrim and the HoloCore to add that Dispersion. So this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. If you imperm on the Phantom Quartz here, it's a really important way to stop the second Dispersion from going into hand, and it's going to prevent us from putting a fusion monster on the board, which is going to help us prevent from getting nibbed, which is really important. That's why HoloCore is so crazy. It being able to banish the gem cards from grave means this part of the combo is a little more insulated. So we're going to activate the Dispersion. We're going to dump another copy of Nephrim and Quartz to summon Seraphonite. We're going to use the Quartz effect in grave to add the Nephrim back to hand. And then we're going to normal summon the Nephrim with the additional normal off of Seraphonite, and then banish a Gem Knight monster to add the Gem Knight Fusion back. Here, we're going to fusion summon into Prismora using the Sprite Sprint to get it off the board because we want that zone to be open. And then we're going to link two of our monsters into Moon of the Closed Heaven. We're going to activate Phantom Quartz to fuse into Master Diamond Dispersion. you are supposed to pay 1,000. That was the one thing I forgot to do during the replay. And it's really important here that you keep a fusion on board so that way your HoloCore engrave is live. And then here, we're going to link off the Phantom Quartz and the Moon to make A-Bow. We're going to banish another monster to add back the Gem Knight fusion. We're going to activate A-Bow, discarding the Gem Knight fusion to summon back one of the 3 engravers from graveyard, and then activate the Aerial Leader, banishing the other 2 to summon itself out. We're going to make a copy of Caesar, and then we're going to make a copy of IP. And then in end phase, or we're going to make sure what we add back the Gem Knight fusion because it's not a once per turn. We're going to move to the end phase and have the A-Bow. So this board, uninterrupted, is Master Diamond Dispersion as the fusion monster for HoloCore in the grave. We can tag into 3 Gem Knight monsters during the opponent's main phase. We have 2 negates on Caesar, IP, which will go into SP if need be, and we have A-Bow plus the HoloCore engrave. It's a really, really deep end board off of just a card and a half.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really cool and a really good showing of what the deck can do. There's going to be a lot of different ways you can play through different hand traps. You have different cards you're going to be drawing alongside just like the 2 that you're doing the combo with, of course. There are a lot of blind second lists right now. One of the larger tournaments that they had in the OCG, it was a blind second list, which is pretty cool to see that they are trying to do a little bit more on the combo side. But there's some lists not playing Fiendsmith, some lists that are playing Fiendsmith, so it's going to vary. But at the same point, we do have a list for you so you can see exactly what we're looking at.
There also were some really interesting little synergies the Fiendsmith engine has with the Gem Knight cards. For example, Nephim sends anything from your hand to the graveyard. So if you accidentally hard open a copy of Fiendsmith in Paradise, you can pitch the Paradise for Nephim if you're bridging the 2 pieces together. If you open a copy of HoloCore plus the Nephim already, you can get the HoloCore into graveyard before your 5th summon to play around Nibiru. If you lead with Brilliant Fusion, you can use Brilliant Fusion's effect to dump a copy of HoloCore and a copy of Nephim to make Seraphonite. Then you have HoloCore engrave on your 2nd summon, which is really crazy. Like I said, the deck is a little weak to cards like Droll and Fuelos, but there's a lot of different ways you can extend. So really, it just depends on where the opponent decides to interrupt you and how you're going to pivot.
Excellent. Let's take a look at the list. All right, and here's the list. We're looking at quite a few different hand traps in here, as well as the engine itself, which is always a good sign. We like to have a lot of non-engine, especially in a format like we're in right now, and especially when there's a lot of different things going on in the deck list, like 2 different engines. So where do you feel like the list falters? What would you change? And where do you feel like the list shines?
So this is the list that I've been testing for a little while. I want to start off by saying my list is nowhere near optimized. I've been working on all different kinds of card combinations, different card counts, different things in the side, different things in the extra. The biggest thing that the list has going for it, and I think especially with the Fiendsmith cards, and what makes it, in my opinion, the most optimal version, is because all of the Fiendsmith cards by themselves are 1-card combos into full Gem Knight combo. As you saw, Engraver plus anything is a full Gem Knight combo, and that includes, you can do the same thing leading with Lurie, you can do it leading with Lacrima, you can do it leading with Tract. So it turns your 1-card starter count to 3 Engravers, 1 Lurie, 2 Armadillo, 3 Nephim, 2 Tract, Foolish Burial. It's really difficult with this deck to brick because you have so many different ways to get the same combo rolling. And because these starters are so compact and the 1-cards are so abundant in the list, you have so much room for non-engine. You can play 6 Charmies, no problem, because in the line that we showed you, you can pitch any card from your hand to summon the Nephim back, meaning you can get value off the Charmy that you drew. You can play Droll, Imperm, Ash. You can play tech cards like Bell. You can even try other hand traps if you think they work for you. And you can do that while maintaining a fairly close card count, so you're not going to crazy numbers like 48 or 49.
Yeah, definitely not wanting to go up that high for sure. So 42 is definitely optimal. I think that's fine with all the hand traps we're playing as well. And there's always going to be cards you just don't want to see in your hand, so going over a little bit is fine. We were saying earlier not to draw the Gem Knight Fusion, you know, that sucks. And that in Paradise, so there are going to be a couple cards you're like, well, maybe I don't want to see this in my opener.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a couple changes you can make in the extra deck as well. In my testing, I like playing a copy of Prismora because the Thunder type requirement for fusion means that you can fuse off the Sprind in just the Engraver line to give yourself a free zone. But also Prismora is a really good going second card because you can add back the Gem Knight fusion just to have it and then use that Gem Knight fusion to pop a card the opponent controls. In that slot, you could play things like Lady Brilliant Diamond. I've tested a second Seraphonite. I've tested other bits and pieces in that slot. There's a lot of different things that you can experiment with in the extra for different Gem Knight names to help kind of improve the deck's ability to play into boards.
Absolutely. And, I really do appreciate you joining me today. It's been a lot of fun talking about Gem Knight and what the deck can do. I know a lot of people are really curious right now because it is a bit newer in support and not too many people have played against the OG variant of that. There's a lot of newer players. I hear more and more every format, which is really cool. So it was a really good insight in what the deck can do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm personally really excited to, sleeve up the Gem Knight deck and take it to an event or two. I think it's got some really cool, unique synergies with the Fiendsmith cards, and I'm really excited to see it perform here in the TCG.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already checked out my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, or subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely go and do so. And again, thank you, Craig. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.